This first half hour, we get to visit with Congressman Jodey Arrington. And Congressman, welcome to the show. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday, Chad. Good to be with you.
Glad to have you on today. Quite a bit going on in Washington, D.C. Let's start off with something that is, I know a lot of people here locally are watching, and that is the Farm Bill. What is going on with the Farm Bill? And my goodness, you must be frustrated with the process.
Well, it's frustrating, but it's par for the course here in Washington. I mean, it's just politics. You've got Democrats, and let's start with the Democrats because we haven't gotten one single vote out of Democrats, not because that the farm programs are not acceptable to them. I think we have universal acceptance and commitment to the Farm Bill, farm policy side. It's the welfare reform piece. I don't know how someone could not vote for 20 hours of mandatory work for able-bodied people on food stamps. But the Democrats are digging their heels in. I think it's just the midterm election political dynamic. But that forces us to go straight Republican, which we would otherwise have a bipartisan bill coming out of committee. But it was a straight Republican vote, and we're going to have to get all Republicans to get to that 218 magic number to get it to the Senate. And the Freedom Caucus decided that they would hold up the Farm Bill and leverage the Farm Bill. They support it. They support it mainly because of the workforce, or rather the work requirements in food stamps. But they want to vote on immigration, so a group of members held their votes back until they could get a commitment to vote on the Goodlatte bill is what they support. It's what I support. So that's what broke down why we didn't get the votes, but we teed it up for a June 22nd vote, and I'm confident that we're going to be able to sail that out of the House into the Senate, and then it has its own set of challenges over there.
Okay, well, before we get further into the Farm Bill, why does the Freedom Caucus want this immigration vote?
Well, there are plenty of us that feel like we need to give the president the resources and the tools he needs to stop illegal immigration, and there are policy gaps, legal gaps that he has to abide by if he's going to respect rule of law, unlike the last president. So, I mean, we've got to, whether it's the wall or it's sanctuary cities or it's folks seeking asylum, there are things that we have to do to reform the current legislative framework. The only way we're going to do that, Chad, is if we get 10 Democrats to vote on a bill in the Senate. It doesn't matter if we get it out of the House. The Goodlatte bill is what I've co-sponsored. It's the most conservative immigration reform bill that exists, and that's certainly where we're going to start. But if we don't do something to get the 10 votes, we'll never get the tools for the president to do what he promised and I promised and a lot of others did with respect to stopping illegal immigration and securing our border. So that they don't want this congressional session of the 115th Congress to go by and not have done anything more than what we've done to date, which is really nothing in terms of getting a vote on the floor. So they got it. I appreciate that. I wouldn't have gone that route. They already had the commitment from the leadership. They didn't trust the leadership. So so we had a little debacle on the House floor, only to come back with the commitment, I guess a firmer commitment that they would have a vote on immigration first, and then we'd have a vote on the Farm Bill on June 22nd.
Okay, but the bill that the Freedom Caucus wants as far as immigration is not the same bill that Will Hurd and some others want that doesn't include a wall, correct?
Correct. The Will Hurd is the moderate immigration bill. Now, listen, there is a something called the discharge petition, and we're very close to that position, having enough signatures. What that would do is have what they call Queen of the Hill. It means you would bring several pieces of legislation to the floor, Democrat and Republican bills, and they'd be debated. The problem with that is we cede control of the agenda to the Democrats, And there's enough Democrats, around 200, that if they could get enough moderate Republicans, they could pass something like Will Hurd's bill. I like Will a lot. We need to keep Will Hurd's around if we're going to keep the majority, but we need a much stronger, more Goodlatte McCall-like immigration bill. So there's a lot swirling around immigration. That's why we've got to start with Goodlatte, and we've got to find a way to get to 218 to get it to the Senate. But all the Freedom Caucus wanted was a vote. They're not looking for an outcome. They just want to have taken a vote, so they would have staked out a position on immigration.
Okay, so are we going to have a vote on immigration in June? Is that what we're looking at? And is it going to be this, this type of deal where everything's going to be brought forward and everything's going to be voted on as far as immigration goes?
So the key is to avoid the Queen of the Hill discharge position, sort of every man,
right.
All free for all.
Yeah.
We don't want that. The way to prevent that is to get to 218 on the Goodlatte bill, which means the Goodlatte bill is we're going to have to figure out a way to get some moderates on board so we can get to 218. There are lots of components to this, and we can break that down as we get closer to it. But the Goodlatte bill is the framework for is the cycle. It's just like, for example, we say in the Goodlatte bill we're taking care of the DACA folks in terms of some legal status. That's about 800,000 people. Trump went beyond that and said their spouse and their children, and that made it 1.5 million people. So there are lots of ways you could find a compromise to go forward. Well, what I won't compromise on are the necessary tools to secure the border and to stop and to enforce our immigration laws in the interior of this country, like banning sanctuary cities. That I will not compromise on. But I think there are ways to find that 218. If we do that, we stave off the discharge petition, the Queen of the Hill, and the chaos that would ensue if we don't get some version of the Goodlatte bill to the out of the House to the Senate.
All right, we're visiting with Congressman Jodey Arrington here on the Chad Hasty Show. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with the Congressman. Much more to get into, including banking news. We'll get to that with Congressman Jodey Arrington and more when we come back. Chad Hasty Show, News Talk 95.1 FM, 790 AM KFYO. We are visiting with Congressman Jodey Arrington on this Friday. And, Congressman, real quick, we'll go back to the Farm Bill. You said that hopefully on about, June 22nd, there will be another vote on the Farm Bill. Will it be the same bill that y'all tried to vote on the first time?
You bet it will. I mean, we've had over 100 hearings in the last couple of years, including field hearings, even in West Texas. Strengthens the safety net. It gives great tools to the Secretary for Trade and Equities in response to the China dynamics on the aluminum and steel, which is important for ag because there's some unintended fallout on that side as we hold China accountable for cheating. Makes important investment in rural infrastructure. Without rural communities and sustainable communities, there's no ag industry. And, of course, we got cotton back in the Farm Bill. So that was number one for us, and that's permanently fixed. But ultimately, I think one of the most meaningful things about this Farm Bill, unlike past Farm Bills, is that we put work requirements for able-bodied adults on food stamps. And listen, there are 7 million able-bodied males, just males, between age 20 and 50, prime work age males, who are on the sidelines when we have 6 million surplus jobs. And we just created a trap for poor people, and we've given them the opportunity to make a lifestyle and play to the worst of human nature instead of incentivizing the best of human nature and restoring the dignity and blessing of work. That is a game changer because culturally, I think our country and the American spirit suffers from an entitlement mentality instead of a work ethic. So that's going to stay in there in the House version. Let's hope that we can keep it in the Senate.
Congressman, what do you say to those? And I know the Heritage Foundation, they've come out against the Farm Bill. It did surprise me when you said that all the members of the Freedom Caucus were in support of the Farm Bill. Because, I'm sure you've heard this in D.C., and you maybe have heard it from even some folks out here. that the government shouldn't be supporting, farmers or ag or anything. If it's a business, let it sink or swim on its own. What do you say to that way of thinking?
Well, look, I'm a free market guy, and I'm a free trade guy, but that presupposes fairness. Free markets presuppose that everybody's competing by the same set of rules. As soon as you have a different set of rules, Chad, then it's not a free market. Number one, with all the taxes, and thank God we lowered our taxes, and we got major tax reform in this country that made us more competitive. But if you look at our labor laws, our minimum wage, look at our environmental and regulations, and look at the cumulative regulatory cost, you cannot tell me that competing against China and India and Brazil and others, it's not an even playing field. Yeah. So, it's nice to have textbook free market, philosophy, but the reality is China will put us out of the food-making business. And if you're talking about yo-yos or pencils, then I say get the cheapest ones, have them come over to the States, and we consumers can just get a cheap deal. You can't do that on war-making machines made out of steel and aluminum. You can't do that with your food infrastructure, because as soon as you depend on foreign countries to feed your own people, you are vulnerable, and you have just reduced your national security strength. So that's what this is about. It's a safety net, Chad. It's not you can't live off the Farm Bill safety net. You can only survive maybe a couple of years if you have terrible volatility in the market and with weather conditions.
Right. Yeah, that's why you see a lot of family farms that are still going out of business throughout
Absolutely.
America. Let's get into banking regulations. The House passed a bill this week that could, if it gets all the way to the president's desk and he signs off on everything, could help out some local banks apparently.
Look, the biggest drag on our economy being stuck on high center over the Obama era, it was not just high taxes, but trillions in cumulative regulatory cost. And so we've got to free up the markets, free up our economy by reducing reg burden. No place is reg burden more exhaustive than in the banking business with Dodd-Frank. Think about it. Dodd-Frank was called the Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act. Wall Street hasn't been reformed since 2010. Big banks have gotten bigger, and the risks of too big to fail have increased. Consumers haven't been protected. We just have less choices. We've had a community bank a week go out of business. A week. 170 have gone away in Texas. The community bank in rural communities like our district is the center of economic activity. So we've lost relationship banking because of Dodd-Frank's silly consumer, quote, protection rules. The best way to protect consumers, let the free market competition, let it commence and give consumers options. And I guarantee you that's the best way, because the market's efficient. And if a consumer isn't being served, then there's another bank on another corner that's glad to take their business. That is the free market version of consumer protection. I don't mean that there shouldn't be some basic elements of, regulatory prevention of deception or fraud, but it ought to be very low, and right now it's not. So we've granted some major relief to community banks, and I think that's going to show up in our economy locally, because those are the kind of banks that are serving our folks in West Texas.
What are the chances this gets to the president?
Oh, it's going. I mean, that was the Senate bill. It was a weaker version of the House bill. We passed it. It's going to be signed by the president.
Very good, very good. I also know that the House has been working on, and this may tie in a little bit, at least with the Farm Bill, but some overall welfare reform legislation.
Yeah, so we're doing the food stamp program reform and the Farm Bill, and then Kevin Brady, chairman of Ways and Means, fellow Texan, just passed out of his committee the Jobs and Opportunity with Benefits and Services Act. What that means is basically the TANF program, which is a big $20 billion about a year temporary assistance for needy families. He's just reforming it, transforming it, and starting with tightening up work requirements. The focus is on the measured success for states is long-term employment. And it's lost its mission. It's diffused. Money's gone to different things outside of that focus. And we need to focus on the neediest people. And our measure of success should be: do they have jobs? Or are they keeping jobs? And if states don't do that, they shouldn't get the federal tax dollars to support it.
Visiting with Congressman Jodey Arrington. Congressman, obviously yesterday was an interesting day with North Korea and President Trump. Any thoughts on the president, as of right now, pulling out of that North Korean summit?
You know, I respect what he's doing because he's not in the frame of mind to negotiate at this point. Let me tell you why.
Congressman, I think your phone's breaking up a little bit. Let's see.
Can you hear me?
Now we got you. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, look, he's not in the right frame of mind because he knows that they've been disingenuous. The North Koreans have had recent cyber attacks on South Korea, and they've said that they're not willing to negotiate away their ability to make a nuclear weapon. I mean, if they're not willing to put that on the table, then we're wasting our time. And I think Trump, I mean, look, we've got to negotiate from strength. We've got our assets deployed, and we have a president that was not afraid to use them. We've let them go way too long. We've let them run on a leash that has gone way too far. And now we're in, I think, serious risk to have an ICBM carrying a payload of nuclear weapons to our homeland. So this is serious. I think the president made the right decision, but he left the door open to talk, and I think you always have to do that. If we can avert war and conflict, we should. But if we have to use our might, like he has in Syria and with ISIS in Afghanistan, I think that lets folks know that this president and this country means business, and that's the peace through strength that Ronald Reagan believed in. And that will make for a safer world. That'll make for a more stable world. And we have the responsibility as the greatest superpower to do that. We got the right commander-in-chief.
Congressman, a couple of questions that have been sent in about the Farm Bill that were texted into the show here. The Farm Bill will hurt West Texans by cutting the conservation reserve payments in half. Landowners will not participate. They will farm it instead. What's your reaction to that?
I think there's some legacy conservation programs that we folded in, for example, to a program called EQIP, which basically the landowner has to participate and put skin in the game. It's a good program. It actually encourages personal responsibility on the landowner's part. That's the kind of policy I think the American people want and expect, who are in not just rural farmland areas, but also urban and suburban. I think the reforms in the conservation program are the right reforms, okay. And I have no problem with them.
Congressman, have a good Memorial Day weekend. We appreciate your time as always.
God bless our troops. Good to be with you.